Hey.
So what you're telling me is, crack a Heineken as we go inside the mine again. Never mind it, men dropping gem candy shine again. Most definitely.
Come on, you got to seize the goddamn gap.
People are so goddamn inefficient.
Oh, god damn it! I don't care if you're old, seize the gap!
Hey, man, I gotta get going. I have some friends from my fantasy league coming over, so I should find my ride.
Hey, I like sports too.
Yeah, I do, but I've never really engaged with the fantasy element of it.
Straight up now, tell me, is it gonna be you and me together? Or are you just having fun?
You know what, John? Cancel your ride. I'll drive you to your fantasy.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
And daily fantasy makes every game matter.
3 into the 2 into the 2 into the what the fuck? You gotta seize the gap. That's right. It's time for Seize the Gap Fantasy Football, baby, right here on the Joe Blow Football Show. Me and the main man Mills, ready to give you what you need to compete and wipe your proverbial veiny hog all over the rest of the people in your leagues. Let's do it right here, right now. Seize the Gap Fantasy Football, Joe Blow Football Show. Mills, let's start with injuries. There were quite a few, and some of them were worse than others, but let's go through some rundown here on what we got from an injury standpoint. And let's start in Washington with Ryan Fitzpatrick.
We love our boy, the Fitzmagic.
You're my boy, Blue.
You know, the video of him at the press conference wearing Deshaun Jackson shit. It's just, I mean, it's epically good. And honestly, he's just that underdog guy, despite somehow going to Harvard. Everybody loves Fitzmagic universally. And he's played pretty good football recently. And so, basically kind of a hip abductor injury. It looks roughly call it about 8 weeks. So 2 months. I would if you have him, if you have an IR spot, great. You can drop him. If you're in a deep super flex league, maybe hold on. Otherwise, you can cut him. And, it's a little bit of a spoiler alert here, but if you're in a 2 quarterback / super flex league, you are going to want to pick up Taylor Heineke, he's going to be worth, I would say, roughly, I would go, I don't know, maybe 60% of your fab if you're in a fab league. I wouldn't go all in on him because there's a chance that Washington does something else at the position, but he checks all the boxes in that he's an athletic dude. He's got good weapons, good offensive line, and basically no one else behind him. So even as I say that, maybe 75%, really go, you got to save a little bit more in Superflex because there's just more things that can kind of happen there as far as guys that get cut. But yeah, I would definitely go to 75% of your fab to pick up Taylor Heineke in a 2 quarterback Superflex league.
So what you're telling me is crack a Heineken as we go inside the mine again. Never minding them. Anyways, crack a Heineken as we go inside the mine again. Mills, what's going on with the running back situation in Seattle?
And it wasn't that long ago that the Seahawks took Rashad Penny with the 1st round pick, and it looks like that he's still struggling with the same injury he had all preseason during training camp, so he's going to go on IR. It looks like Alec Collins will probably be elevated as the guy who becomes Chris Carson's handcuff. So if you were carrying Penny, you can go ahead and cut him or tuck him on IR and pick up Alex Collins. If you're in a deep PPR league, I guess you could probably put a DJ Dallas on your watch list.
That's a revolving door there. What about our friend Austin Eckler in Los Angeles? What's going on with the Chargers?
Eckler scared people a little bit by being questionable on, I believe, missed practice on Thursday and then was limited on Friday, but fantasy owners were told on Saturday, I think he would be a full go, and he was. I think the main takeaway here is that he somehow had no targets in the game, and that their rookie draft pick Larry Roundtree operated as the primary backup. So if you were hanging on to Justin Jackson or Josh Kelly, I would go ahead and cut that for Larry Roundtree.
Larry Roundtree, dude, he's log jamming.
Good name.
Yeah, it's a great name. He's doing a little lot. Jackie Cheehorn signed him, dude. That's his agent. Lastly, we saw a pretty big injury in Denver, which they impressed, at the offensive skill position. But what's happened there with Denver and the wide receiver situation?
Jerry Jeudy, unfortunately, has a high ankle sprain. He's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. But with these things, it's always better to go to the long end. So if you're a fantasy owner, I would say just don't plan on having him for 6 weeks. Basically, is fair. You would think that Cortland Sutton probably gets a bump, but again, he's coming off of an ACL injury, so it's not impossible that he starts a bit slow. So I think really the main beneficiary early will be Noah Fant, who did pick up targets as that game went on. And at a weak tight end position, he could easily be, the tight end 5, tight end 6. And there'll be two popular pickup targets here. One is Tim Patrick, who played well last year, pretty much primarily an outside wide receiver, but he's a tall, fast guy and has played well given the chances. He just doesn't have the pedigree of the other guys. KJ Hamler out of Penn State, who was a rookie last year, I believe 3rd-round pick for them. And this dude, in the comparison, he's kind of like raw like Godwin, coming out of Penn State, very similar to Godwin, but he's just really raw and dropped a touchdown this week. But he's the kind of dude, a little bit like Miko Hardman in Kansas City, if he ever put it together, like he could really happen, whereas Tim Patrick is kind of going to be okay. So, if you want to swing for the fences or whatever, I would add Hamler. If you just want to add one of them on the cheap, which is usually the way I go with this kind of thing, go ahead, spend like 2% of your fab and you'll probably get Tim Patrick.
Mills, but we should not be cutting Jerry Jeudy, right?
No, man. Shit, no, man.
No, even if you don't have an IR, if you're in a league where you only start 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and a flex, and someone's willing to pay you something of value for him and you don't have an IR, I would think about it. But otherwise, he's good enough, and basically his value is at its lowest point it'll be right now, and it will only go up every week he gets closer to returning. With every positive Roto World blurb or whatever, his value will rise. And you probably spend a 5th or 6th round pick on him, so I wouldn't bail out now unless you are in a league that, where you have 3-4 bench spots and no IR. In that case, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Got it. Let's move on to some of our priority ads here. Obviously the Ravens running back situation with Tyson Williams looks like that's one to really consider here as a priority ad, especially considering the way he's performing against the Raiders currently. But who else we got in the world of priority ads that jumps off the page to you heading into week 2 in fantasy football?
Yeah, well, we already mentioned the boy Heineke. Taylor Heineke is the top ad in Superflex. In any other league, as Jamie G just pointed out, if Tyson Williams of the Ravens is still available, I would probably burn up to 85 to 95% of your fab on him. No questions asked. In single quarterback leagues, I would probably, I would take Heineke over, say, Matt Ryan, but he's not a priority ad. The only priority ad I would have as QB in a single quarterback league right now is Jameis Winston, who looked pretty good. If you have a weak starting quarterback situation, I feel comfortable burning, 5 to 10% of your fab on him. Elijah Mitchell killed it at running back for the 49ers. He's going to be probably the most popular ad this week, given the amount of leagues he's available in. But I do think that the 49ers they're not fucking around when they say they're going to play the hot hand. So I wouldn't go too nuts. I'd say maybe 50, 55% of your fab. So, you want to go hard, but you don't want to go all the way. You want to save something for prom night. And, not quite a priority ad, but you have JaMycal Hasty there, who is probably going to had almost no attention paid to him. So instead of maybe spending 55% on Elijah Mitchell, you could spend 3% of your fab on JaMycal Hasty. Kenneth Gainwell, running back for the Eagles, looks to be the clear running back 2 and handcuff to Miles Sanders. So I think he's worth probably about 25% of your fab. He's on the board. You could say basically the same thing for Tony Jones Jr. of the Saints. He's pretty much a clear number 2 there and the handcuff to Alvin Kamara. So again, I'd burn about 25% of your fab on him. We're seeing Latavius Murray be active for the Ravens. He was effective when used on a similarly good team last year in New Orleans. I do think that Tyson Williams is the dude, but I would still spend 10, 15% of your fab on Latavius Murray because they're going to use multiple running backs no matter what. And I would say that's pretty much it for priority ads.
Yeah. And we'll post our list of full ads for everyone who wants to see that. Let's go to drop it like it's hot. And one injury that we forgot to mention that was a big one was Raheem Mostert in the 49ers. You touched on Elijah Mitchell, but obviously we're dropping this guy, right? I mean, it's really unfortunate for Mostert because when healthy, he is dynamic. And I think, temporarily heading into week 2, you're looking to drop Zach Moss. I do think he will come in and be a player. But it looks like they want Matt Breida. Matt Breida gives them something offensively on the Buffalo Bills that they just don't have. And Devin Singletary, I think his performance against the Steelers, 11 rushes, 72 yards. I think he cements himself as kind of their go-to back heading into the league. Who else you got that you're dropping heading into week 2 here?
If you want to go position by position, I think right now you could probably cut Ben Roethlisberger unless he's the only quarterback you have and there's nothing on the waiver wire. He still can't throw the ball deep. I would rather go with one of the rookies who has some upside on, as far as rushing the ball as well or whatever. Roethlisberger has the weapons, but this defense is pretty good. I don't think you get the volume to be there being bad. You cut him. I think you could probably cut Justin Fields, the guys who were trying to hope he would take over early or whatever, because the Bears are bad. Justin Fields isn't going to be able to fix the Bears. He might have a couple of flash games, but he's not going to be a guy you feel comfortable starting every week. So unless you're in a super flex league, there's no need to carry him. And Matt Ryan, I would cut. It doesn't look like he has it. The offensive line isn't there. The Falcons look like one of the worst teams in the league. Can adios him. On the other side of that game, Boston Scott, running back for the Eagles, was generally drafted over Kenneth Gainwell. X-nay him, get Gainwell if you can. As far as the running back position goes, I would probably cut bait on all the Jets running backs. The last one I would cut would be Michael Carter, just because they spent the draft pick on him. So I think they have the most invested in him. But if you don't have enough room on your bench, I get it. As we said before, Rashad Penny, you can get rid of. Justin Jackson for the Chargers, you can also cut the running back, as it seems that Larry Rountree is a backup there. Salvin Ahmed and probably Malcolm Brown for the Dolphins, you can cut. A couple of wide receivers like Quez Watkins for the Eagles. That there's just not enough volume there, I think, to pay that off. And unfortunately, probably I would say Elijah Moore and Jameson Crowder on the Jets. It really looks like it's going to be a one-man show with Corey Davis. And I just don't think there's going to be enough there, especially, when Crowder is back and him and Moore are going to cannibalize each other in the slot. And tight end, you could cut almost all the tight ends back. The easiest cut's probably Dan Arnold for the Panthers, who finished behind Ian Thomas in targets, and they just don't seem like a team that's going to utilize the tight end.
Not sure there's enough balls to go around there. That's what she said. I mean, between their three wideouts with Terrence Marshall, and you've got DJ Moore and Robbie Andrews. I mean, it's just, there's too many, and Christian McCaffrey is basically a wide receiver in that offense as well. So too many things to go around there. Who do we want to be on the lookout for? Let's bring that level of heat to the fans of Joe Blow Football Show right here on Seats the Gap Fantasy Football. Mills, who are we watching? I'll start us off. I'm keeping an eye on J.J. Taylor up in New England. I think a costly fumble by Damian Harris. The Rook didn't really look up to snuff and ready for prime time just yet. I think there's wiggle room here, and I think obviously it's good for James White owners, but he's a guy that I'm watching here.
Now, J.J. Taylor made the team both years after being an undrafted free agent last year. I think the running back position is pretty thin. I think on the Bengals, you could pick up Samaje Perine, because he seems to be pretty clearly both Joe Mixon's handcuff and kind of the change of pace guy when they choose to use one. And Matt Brady for the Bills, obviously, if he's going to be active, it does seem like they would envision some sort of role for him. He's not a guy who would ever play consistently, but he's the kind of guy that could have, a 40, 50-yard touchdown catch. So if you're desperate for a second running back and you're just trying to hope and pray to find a way to 10 points, he's not bad. Wide receiver, the Lions really kind of spread it all over the place, but Quintez Cephas, who popped a little bit last year, is probably the best option there. I'm probably not buying into any of the Rams secondary options because they have so much invested, but we saw Van Jefferson with the long touchdown. So if you wanted to go in on one, I would go him over Jackson or Tutu Atwell. Zach Pascal, again, for the Colts. Michael Pittman wasn't great. Paris Kendall disappointed. Zach Pascal's kind of he's one of those guys who just hangs around every year. It's kind of like the new version of, like, I don't know, poor man's Mohamed Sanu. Whatever. If you're in a 16-man league or something like that, go for it. And at tight end, just keep an eye on David Njoku for a first-round pick for the Browns. He's in his fifth season now, but they did, he's there because they picked up his fifth-year option. And despite Austin Hooper getting targets and Harrison Bryant getting targets, Njoku led him with 5. And this is a dude, if he ever figures it all out, could have a nice career breakout similar to a guy like Jared Cook.
Right now, there's some guys in the buy low standpoint that I think are prime candidates. Let's just go through a couple of these right now. Obviously, when you look at the tight end position, both George Kittle and Kyle Pitts they underperformed. I think everyone expected Kyle Pitts to be the greatest show on turf and tear the world apart in fucking Atlanta. I mean, they just fucking suck.
Correct.
And so Matty Ice was what'd you call him? Matty Melt. I mean, come on, this guy's fucking. So, but from a tight end standpoint, I think both those guys right now, their stock's a little bit low. It's probably a good thought there. There's some quarterbacks on this list, or at least one, and Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, this has got to be a decent time. I mean, a little bit at least to kind of buy low here with him, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's pretty much a buy low should basically be a guy coming off what you think is one of his worst games of the season. So that's why you have Ryan Tannehill on this list. You'll have Aaron
Ryan
Rodgers
Tannehill.
on this list. Trey Sermon, who was a healthy scratch. Saquon Barkley, who only played a little. Devin Singletary, who got hyped up and then was okay, but didn't light the world on fire. So someone who thought maybe that he was going to have this big game with Zach Willis out is disappointed. Javonte Williams. He played quite a bit against the Giants, but it was Melvin Gordon who got the long touchdown. Guys
Yeah.
might be thinking, oh, I drafted the wrong Denver running back. This is a spot where you could, try to swoop in there.
Julio
wide
Jones is
receiver-
a good one.
Exactly. Because, you would say AJ Brown, but he was drafted before. I think people were already a little sketchy on Julio because he's older, injury prone, switching teams. Justin Jefferson, just because, again, people had to spend a high pick on him and they watched Adam Thielen score 2 touchdowns. They're like, well, what the fuck, dude? Maybe he's not that kill. Brandon Ayuk, who barely played, like there'll be people who are thinking about cutting Brandon Ayuk. So you might be able to get him for like a literal song. Just do yourself a TikTok and be like, I'll trade you this TikTok for them, or make it an NFT or whatever the kids do these days. And just if you're in a deep PPR league, especially this is like a dynasty special, but Cole Beasley in Buffalo, as long as he doesn't run into a COVID thing, he seems like he's the clear like our wide receiver 2, just number 2 target in the passing game there. And so he can probably rack up, be like, I don't know, wide receiver 28 on the season. And Dynasty, you could probably get him for like a 3rd round pick, which is, if you need to fill your wide receiver 3 slot, that's a really cheap price to play, even for a 1-year rental.
Let's wrap this up with selling high, right? And so right now is the time. And the top one that comes to mind is Tyrod Taylor, right? I think we both agree that's probably his best fantasy football game of his career this past weekend.
I don't know if his career, but
Jacksonville.
that's really just a thing in like 2 quarterback super flex leagues. No one was really starting him in a 1 quarterback league, but in like 2 quarterback super flex, like that's a thing. And as soon as he does bad, this is the Texans team. Like if they win 5 games, that's cool, but that's not really hurting them. They need to win like 2 games. They need that draft pick. They just really do. So, I don't think they would trade Taylor, but there's no guarantee he starts all year. Same thing. Go to the guys who kind of overperformed this week on the same team. You have Brandon Cooks, who I think is going to get a ton of volume there. I just don't think he's going to get touchdowns. So, it kind of limits him to being a wide receiver 3 when you're just basing it on volume, even in PPR leagues. Adam Thielen, same reason I'm buying Jefferson, I'm selling Thielen. He got the 2 touchdowns this week. If somebody's buying him as a legit wide receiver 1, I'm selling. Gronk, I think he's a tight end 1, but I don't think he's going to be the tight end 1. If you get someone who's willing to pay anything near that, you can go ahead and sell him. Debo Samuel, same thing. Ayuk is going to come back and have a role. And Trey Lance will probably be at the controls at some point. And I love Debo, but it's been hurt a lot. So if you get someone again who's going to look at this huge game from Debo Samuel, sell him. Tyler Lockett, he probably just had, again, he has like 3 huge games every year that amount for like 70% of his points. He just had one of them. If you can get those points and sell him for a more consistent option, I would do it. David Montgomery looked really good, actually, really good. But I think the Bears are going to be so bad, it's going to be very tough for him to just put up the points to be that running back 1 that someone might pay you for. Same thing, the Falcons look bad, so I'd get off Mike Davis if you could. It just, Cordell Patterson honestly looked better, and I don't know how the Falcons are going to score touchdowns. And this is a little bit, but Jamal Williams for the Lions, it was a pretty clear split with him and Swift. I think it will continue to be a split, but still, Swift, I think, is the better talent. And ultimately, this will probably devolve a bit from this kind of 50-50 split into more like a 70-30 split.
Yeah. No, I agree. Let's move this thing along to our week 2 streaming options, right? And there's a couple here. I really want to focus, quarterback, defense, and special teams. I'll start us out here. I like Teddy Bridgewater down in Jacksonville as a week 2 streaming option here. Who else you got? Just 1 or 2 other quarterbacks that might be in play here for a streamer.
Yeah, I think that Jacksonville at this point is pretty much on you can start anybody against them at any position rule. Like if you
is it the jet rule from last year? Like it's Jacksonville.
It seems like there's going to be a couple of those this year. I think Atlanta's there. I think there's a couple of teams where Houston's probably there, where you just literally, if you got them, start them. Smoke them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then you hit rock bottom. I would say next week probably, even though I said he's probably a cut, Roethlisberger at home versus the Raiders, I think it's you need that 250 and 2 touchdowns or whatever, that kind of baseline play. I think Roethlisberger get that for you. And even though Mac Jones wasn't great this week, on the road at the Jets next week. I can see that being a little kind of mini, like sneaky shootout with the two rookie quarterbacks. But I would rather be on the Magnum side of it, I think, than the Zach Wilson side of it. And who you have defenses, Jamie G? You know, I like streaming defenses a lot. You know, I don't have a lot of, you know, I very rarely start the same defense week to week. So, you know, who are you looking to pick up?
Well, if they could even repeat just part of what they did last week, I really like Arizona going up against Minnesota. I think, you know, Minnesota's offensive line in particular made Cincinnati's defense, I think, look a little bit better than it was. And credit due to Cincinnati, they played well enough to win that game. But I think Chandler Jones is a man on a fucking mission to get paid. And until he gets paid, look out. It doesn't matter. We've seen this with certain players. When they're in a contract year, that's prime time push it, baby. And they're looking to fuck. And that's all he's doing. And he's every week. I mean, 5 sacks last week. He completely dominated that game. As good as Kyler Murray was, I think you can make a case that Chandler Jones is the best player on the field, period. And so I like Arizona's defense this week against Minnesota.
Like we said earlier, Taylor Lewan literally pinned a tweet at the top of his Twitter account thanking Chandler Jones for whooping his ass so thoroughly. Like it's yeah, I mean, obviously you're gonna probably want to spin the Packers versus the Lions. It's just more of a condemnation against the Lions than a appreciation for the Packers, who were really bad last week. Flip side of that game, probably could start the Saints versus the Panthers. You know, Darnold was okay against the Jets, but you know, the Saints really made the Packers look bad, so they have to be kind of one of your top plays there. And Cincinnati, not the greatest defense, but
it's Chicago. Yeah,
I think the Bears are bad.
The Bears' offensive line is just terrible. And I mean, you know, you're starting a 50-year-old Jason Peters. He got hurt. I mean, it's just they're very bad. And it wasn't even that Andy Dalton was that bad. He wasn't. It's just they're bad. And I think, you know, Cincinnati's defense is going to again be opportunistic, and I think they'll make some plays.
For fantasy defense, that's what you're looking for. That one touchdown, pick for a touchdown, 9, like that pays it off basically. Yeah. Like they're worth it right there with that one play. So that's what play. You know,
and I think there might be a turnover or two here.
Yeah, sacks and turnovers. That's really when you're looking, unless there's still some defenses that play, or at least I should say, with a points allowed aspect or a yardage aspect. But if your scoring system doesn't allow for negative points, then you shouldn't care about your defense really at all. You just want sacks and picks. Like you would almost rather have a defense in a shootout because they're going to run a lot of plays. Gives you more chances for those sacks or whatever, because you don't care if they give up, 45 points and 500 yards. But if you do play in a league where they can have negative points, then you have to approach that a little bit differently.
Yep. Understood. Let us know what you want to know to win your league. Get at us at Joe Blow Football Show, joeblowfootballshow.com, at Jamie G, Mills, all the shit. We're out there. Let us know. That was Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. Get your money right. Follow us right here on the Joe Blow Football Show. Peace.
I'll stay in your lane. Seize the gap, you goddamn bitch.
Most definite. Let this be my last will and testament for the pessimist. Exercise for the exorcist. Johnny treacherous, like 3. I'm supposed to be perpetuous. Decimate the poetry, get everything that's supposed to me. The lecturers, Jonathan, king of the 7 seas. Battle with Leviathan, the Methodist. Poly to your deficit, hit it up. If I can't live it up, somebody gotta give it up. John J, blow him out the water, Dr. Bombay. Your bitch look like Strong J, rubbing me the wrong way. Burn one and saute, bringing you different ways of swordplay. They busting bullets over Broadway, deep cover. I'm like Larry, when the fish burn, I burn rubber. Cause I'm not an easy lover. 10 to midnight, butt naked with a knife. Ask my AR lights, I've been crazy all my life. Hard time, homicide, time fly, do or die. Crooked ass and crooked eyes, scripture from the dark side. Johnny 5, I reside in the killer beehive. Only the strong gon' survive. From the depths of the killer to the top and now born. Wildin' on Staten Island, be the poet John John. Can't forget Bobby, if I did I feel chip. Like my sandwich ain't a sandwich without Miracle Whip. From the depths of the killer to the top and now born. Wildin' on Staten Island, be the poet John John. Can't forget Digi, if I did I feel jip. Like my sandwich ain't a sandwich without Miracle Whip.
I'm so fucking focused.